Hi, good evening.
Hi guys, good evening, Cayetano. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and start. Okay, so last class, we saw a similar task. We saw also an integrated type of speaking task. But bueno, como vimos, era integrated, so we had to base ourselves on a text and a conversation. No, cuando es integrated es que hay material de base, hay un texto y hay un audio. En este caso, igual hay un texto y un audio, but the difference is that now it's a little bit more formal. It's a little bit more academic. The language is a little bit more, not complicated, pero sí un poco más, no, académico, un poco más pesado. And so both the text and the lecture are like this. Okay. De estas dos cosas, el texto y el audio, van a ser sobre el mismo tema, but they're going to have complementing information. So maybe the first one, el texto les va a dar una definición más amplia, and the lecture will then give you specific examples, or maybe el texto te va a dar un argumento y luego te va a dar varios pequeños contraargumentos. So, información complementaria siempre sobre el mismo tema. ¿Ok? So, vamos a ver esos. All right. And same as last time. En cuanto al tiempo, es igual que la otra vez. Van a tener 45 segundos para leer el texto, which is also pretty short. So, no se estresen por eso. Then you listen to the lecture. And you have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. So, en cuanto a manejo de tiempo, igual que la anterior vez, ¿verdad? 60 segunditos para hablar. And before we start, are there any questions you have? Any difficulty? Tal vez que hayan tenido la anterior clase, algo que les haya costado. All right. Bueno, so we're gonna start same as last time. Vamos a leer y les pongo cronómetro. So, read a passage about the development of written language. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. So, mismo que la otra vez, guys, como les decía, these are a little bit more formal. El lenguaje es un poco más pesado. It's a little bit more academic. So, van a haber palabras que sean un poco difíciles o van a haber conceptos que sean un poco difíciles. If there's anything you don't understand, tell me, porque, o sea, sí, es muy común que la gente tenga dudas o dificultades en this type of task. So es mejor resolver todas las dudas aquí, ahora, que pueden pausar y escuchar y todo con calmita than on the actual test. So tell me if there's anything you have questions about, okay? Sus 45 segundos to start reading. Start now. All right, guys. Has everyone finished reading? ¿Hay alguien que no haya terminado de leer? Do you have any questions, any words, alguna palabra, alguna idea that isn't fully clear?
The word resemble. I don't know what is that.
Resemble means look like. So early pictographs were meant to look like physical objects. So como el idioma chino o egipcio, ¿no? Físicamente el dibujito se parece a la cosa que es. Any other questions? All right, so we're going to go ahead and listen to the lecture. For the lecture, igual los mismos consejos de siempre. Pay attention to emphasis, pay attention to keywords. Es clarito, cuando dicen alguna palabra importante, le ponen énfasis. So pay attention to those. Y take notes. Always have a paper to take notes because you're only going to be able to listen to this one time. Así que, if everyone's ready, we're going to go ahead and listen to the passage. Like I said, guys, casi siempre les va a dar información complementaria. So acá en el texto nos da una definición general, kind of pictograms in language. Now they're going to give us specific examples. So presten atención a qué ejemplos da también para ir anotando eso.
Now listen to a lecture in an art history class.
You might be surprised at how close the link between those ancient symbols and our current writing systems actually is. Let me show you some really neat examples from the Roman alphabet to illustrate. Take the letter A. It looks kind of like a triangle with two sticks underneath it, right? Well, those sticks used to actually be horns on a drawing of a bull. A started out as an ancient Egyptian pictograph of a bull's head. This naturally stood for the word bull or a similar creature, but over generations, the eyes and other details on the bull's head disappeared until the head just looked like a triangle and the horns just looked like sticks. Voila. The next example is a bit more distorted. But the letter E has a very similar story. This one started out as a stick figure, an image of a person praying. A line down the middle represented the legs, body, and head, and then two arms extended out on either side. But over time, the symbol was rotated. Rotation like that is pretty common historically, and a part of the image was lost. Now, the three horizontal strokes of the E, those are what's left of the two arms and the head of that person in prayer.
Using examples from the talk,
Okay, before we listen to the question, is there anything that wasn't clear? Any word, alguna parte de lo que he explicado? Hablen ahora o callen para siempre, because luego no van a tener la información necesaria para responder la pregunta. All right, if everything's clear, vamos a escuchar ahora la pregunta. And same thing as last time, guys. You have 30 seconds to prepare. So, estén listos para eso.
using examples from the talk, explain how pictographs changed to become modern writing.
Okay, how pictographs became modern writing. You have 30 seconds to prepare, starting now. All right, who would like to share their response? Is anyone ready? Adrián, how about you?
I couldn't hear the audio, having some connection problems.
Yeah, dale. Don't worry. Someone
Yeah,
else.
I'm going to enter again to the meeting.
Sí, no te preocupes. Si hace falta, igual puedes salir y volver a entrar a la reunión para ver si. All right, so someone else then. Joaquin, would you like to share your answer?
Teacher, I can complete my answer.
All right. ¿Qué sientes que te falta? ¿Te faltó tiempito o te faltó información, maybe?
I can understand really well the listening.
All right. Yeah, this listening especially, like I'm telling you guys, todo el mundo tiene problema con este listening en específico. Anyone else who didn't really understand the lecture?
I think that the lecture, not, but listening was a little hard to understand, especially this when she talked about the history. I'm lost in this part.
Okay. Which is the most difficult part for you guys with this lecture? The vocabulary maybe, or tal vez maybe she was speaking too fast. ¿Qué es lo que les cuesta con este audio? Maybe it's the vocabulary words, maybe because they're very specific, like muy de history and sociology and language. So, bueno, vamos a ver si nos acordamos de toda la información que nos han dado. She gives two examples of how letters have changed, right? Do you know what letters she uses as an example?
A triangle and E. Yeah.
The letters A and E, right? She gives those two examples. So she tells us Cuando sucede eso, como que es un tema académico que usa palabras bien pesadas, usa conceptos bien pesados, maybe that aren't in our area. Like if you study, I don't know, if you study medicine y te preguntan sobre historia del arte, you're kind of going to be a little, ¿qué? If you study, y lo opuesto, si estudias historia del arte y te preguntan cosas biológicas, you're going to be like, what? So when that happens, when you feel you don't have all the information o como que tienes huecos de información en lo que has escuchado, really a la hora de la hora, the only thing you can do is try to fill in those holes con información de la vida real, ¿no? Información que tú sepas, información de tu conocimiento general, ¿no? And anyway, these things are kind of like conocimiento general, ¿no? Preguntan cosas de cultura general, aunque sean en estas áreas un poco más académicas. But they do ask things you can kind of give your knowledge on. So, si te falta información, es rellenar con lo que sepas. They mention that this is an Egyptian pictograph. Maybe al responder no te acuerdas de la palabra pictograph, but you remember Egyptian y que los egipcios tenían hieroglyphs. Sí, tenían hieroglyphs, so you can use hieroglyph and igual se entiende the answer you're giving. So eso, usa esos dos ejemplos, la letra A y la letra E. She says the letter A used to mean what exactly? What did the picture represent? ¿Qué solía representar la letra A, according to the lecture? It used to be a bull's head, right? So, con es igual, esa información ya tienen, que era una cabecita de toro, la letra A. And then it changed to mean, ya no significa, la letra A no significa toro, right? Doesn't mean bull. So the meaning changed. For the next example, she mentions the letter E that used to mean el dibujito que solía significar de la letra E. Do you remember what she says?
I think body and head.
A person, it was a little person, era como una figurita de palitos, of a person praying, so una personita rezando. And then she also mentions that it rotated. So el cambio que tuvo para hacer la E que ahora conocemos is that it rotated. So ahí estaban esas palabras claves, ¿no? The two examples, the change that they made. So a keyword could be meaning, a keyword could be rotation, a keyword could be pictograph. So todas estas palabritas podemos ir sacando. Igual cuando como que les falta el concepto o como que, como les digo, es un área que no está en su área, no entienden de todos los conceptos, saquen palabras clave. Taking keywords from the text and the audio les salva la vida. Now that that's clear, ahora que está un poco, hemos explicado un poco más los ejemplos, todo, do you guys feel you can answer? ¿Se sienten más listos para contestar? ¿Sí? Ya. Ahora sí, Joaquín, would you like to try? ¿La logras? ¿Quieres intentar?
Okay, teacher.
All right. So your 60 seconds to speak start now. Ah, bueno, sí, también les debe tiempo para prepararse, ¿no? All right. Ahora sí, with your answer ready. Ready? ¿Listo, Joaquín?
Okay.
Yeah, ahora sí. Your 60 seconds start now.
According to the reading passage, pictures to presenting idea is many different for of work.
¿Qué tal, Joaquin? Nervous? Or, all right, don't worry. So let's give you a little more time to think about it, and we're gonna we're gonna go ahead with someone else in the meantime. Would someone else like to try? This one, I know this one especially. Liliana?
Teacher, yes.
All right. Dale. I know this one especially is a huge pain in the ass. Así que dale.
Yeah.
Dale, your 60 seconds start now.
According to the passage, the pictograms is a very simple idea to represent some words, some drums too, in the many different places in the world. In the lecture, the professor mentioned some examples. For example, one is a letter A that it means all, and it changes with the time. And the other example is letter A. This is a similar history that the letter that's the first example, but it's human prey, and this changes too. So we can see in these two examples how the pictogram represents some ideas in very simple draws.
All right. Thank you, Liliana. And you have 5 seconds left. Okay, ya está. All right, thank you. So regarding time management, I feel you managed to fill the 60 seconds very well. The structure was also very clear. You know, you mentioned, as always, guys, cuando les dan información, o sea, cuando tienen que responder en base a ciertas cosas, cuando tienen un texto, cuando tienen un audio, you always have to reference it. You have to give context, right? According to the lecture, according to the reading, da 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 da. So eso, igual, eso estaba ahí, and in the right amount of time, more or less it should be 15 seconds, que se tome no más que 15 segundos para dar esa introducción. Así que el tiempo indicado para la introducción. Good job, Liliana. And another good thing that you can always do is, como les dije, sacar palabras clave, but also rephrase it in your own words. No repetir tal cual está en el texto, tal cual está en el audio, sino, you know, give your own interpretation of it. So yeah, those things were both there. It was well structured. So I think it was a good answer. Just one tiny thing, when you were mentioning both examples, the first time you mentioned it was the letter A, que estaba bien, and the second time you also mentioned it was the letter A, and it was the letter E. So ese detallito, but other than that, good answer. Thank you, Liliana. All right, one more for this one, because I know you guys, I know this one is hard. Pero como este es el medio dificilito, let's try to vencerlo. Vamos a luchar insistentemente with this one. One more answer for this one. Anyone else who would like to try? Camila?
Okay.
All right. So te pongo tú.
I'm a little bit nervous, but okay, I can try.
All right. Don't worry. Don't be nervous.
Okay.
All right. So your 60 seconds start now.
Okay, according to the passage, pictographs are an ancient form of writing. It was used especially in Egypt, but in other countries too. And it used physical objects to this form of writing. The professor gave an example that of the letter A and E. The letter A was at the beginning a triangle, and it changed to the letter E. And the letter A, sorry, and the letter E was a human brain, and that's
Go
all.
ahead, finish your idea. Don't worry.
Okay, and the letter E was human brain, and when it changed, it many details disappeared too about it and changed, and it was it is how the letter E appeared in the world.
Okay, thank you, Camila. Again, all the information is there, but I feel at the beginning and the time you had to organize your ideas, ahí podías haber estructurado un poco más clara toda esa info, ¿no? Because everything was there, solo que por manejo de tiempo y demás, I feel they could have, the examples especially, the introduction, up until the introduction, it was perfect, ¿no? El tiempo necesario, the introduction was clear, the concepts had everything it needed to have, but the examples kind of le diste vuelta sobre la misma idea, ¿no? And, pero eso, it was clear. So, eso. Thank you, Camila. Good job. Por eso, you guys, if there's anything that's not clear now, tell me. Because if you don't have the information, si les ha faltado cualquier cosita en el reading, si les ha faltado entender cualquier cosita en el audio, then you might not have the necessary information to respond. Les pueden quedar dudas y no les va a quedar claro cómo responder. So it's important that you guys fully understand everything. All right. Ahí vamos a ir con otro de historia y arte. Okay, so again, same thing. We're going to take 45 seconds to read the passage. In this case, it's a passage from an art history textbook. Me van a decir cuando quieran que vaya bajando y eso. Your 45 seconds start now. Okay. I think some of you guys are still reading, so we're gonna wait a little while longer. Okay, is there anything you don't understand from this text? Any words? I know there are a lot of words that are like new vocabulary, so maybe some words, maybe some concept that wasn't clear.
Teacher, what is the meaning of pinnacle?
Sorry, what?
Pinnacle?
Pinnacle. So
Yes.
here, represented the pinnacle of achievements, como que el punto más alto, o el centro de, o lo más wow del éxito. So like in the, ¿cuándo era? 1920s, I think, Bolivia was the pinnacle of economy. Digamos, éramos el centro, la cúspide, eso es en Spanish, cúspide. Any other word?
Yes, I have one. Strip. Cardboard based on the cereal strip.
Strived.
Right.
To strive means to be very successful or to no tener una lucha, pero que esa lucha sea tenga frutos, sea exitosa. So artwork based on those ideals, strived, le iba muy bien. Some other word? I think there was one more that was kind of like Jarring. You guys know what this one means? Jarring means kind of that takes you by surprise. That's a little shocking. So even though this type of art, este nuevo tipo de arte was jarring, que era un poco choqueante, que era un poco que te incomodaba, eso empezó a reemplazar estos ideales de arte. Okay, so I think con eso all the ideas are clear, right? ¿O queda algo que no esté claro? All right, con esos, if everything's clear, we're going to move on to the lecture. Igual, como siempre, escuchen palabras clave. You're going to be able to hear when they mention them. Listos para tomar apuntes, and here we go.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a class focusing on the history of modern art.
Now, scholars sometimes like to say that in the 20th century, art based on Greco-Roman ideals of beauty and physical perfection fell totally out of favor thanks to the work of pioneering critics like Roger Fry. But today, I'm going to argue that this is actually an oversimplification. Now, paintings in the 20th century certainly became more abstract than at any other time in history. But in some ways, this had nothing to do with the work of professional critics like Roger Fry. I mean, I think it can be convincingly argued that the change in style was simply due to the invention of the camera. See, it was no longer necessary to turn to professional portrait painters to have one's picture taken. And for this reason, there was a gradual decrease in the number of students who went to painting school. It was simply no longer important to spend years mastering technical painting. And instead, it became possible to produce highly abstract works meant to express, well, ideas. However, many of these ideas still had to do with the age-old Greco-Roman ideals. For example, Manet's painting, Luncheon on the Grass, which is sometimes called the first modern painting, it actually used images originally copied from an ancient Roman coffin. Pablo Picasso, a great abstract artist, also created several paintings reacting to Greek mythology. And to this day, advertisers and filmmakers often turn to Greco-Roman notions of beauty in order to entice audiences. In fact, many modern artists have reacted to too much abstraction in modern art and are returning to classical Greek and Roman themes in their work. So, the Greco-Roman tradition in art is far from dead.
Using the poem.
Okay, before we listen to the question, how did you feel about this one? ¿Qué les ha parecido? Is it igual de difícil que el anterior? Easier? Did you understand it better?
Audio is more easy than the other.
Okay. Es un poquito, algo es algo. But bueno, con tal de que lo hayan entendido mejor. Any questions about any information or any concepts? Any words? Yeah, so we're gonna.
I have a question. I can hear something about highlight abstract or highlight abstraction. What is that? I don't know.
I'm not sure at which point she mentions it. Do you remember more or less? Jens.
In the middle.
Let's listen again. Even if it's así como que dices aquí es when you listen to it.
Okay.
I mean, I think it can be convincingly argued that the change in style was simply due to the invention of the camera. See, it was no longer necessary to turn to professional portrait painters to have one's picture taken. And for this reason, there was a gradual decrease in the number of students who went to painting school. It was simply no longer important to spend years mastering technical painting. And instead, it became possible to produce highly abstract works meant to express.
English part.
Highly abstract works. So we're talking about art and like in Spanish, no? Arte abstracto. So highly abstract means altamente abstracto. So very, very like cosas súper conceptuales y locas y raras. Like Pablo
Okay.
Picasso, right? Because then she mentions Picasso, and Picasso was very abstract.
Abstract. Yes. Okay, thank you, Dre.
All right. Thanks, Camila. Any other thing that wasn't clear? Because remember, guys, luego para responder tienen que tener toda esta info clara. Okay, so let's listen to the question.
Turning to classical Greek and so the Greco far from dead.
Using the points and examples from the lecture, explain how artistic standards changed in the 20th century.
Okay, so explain how artistic standards changed. Siempre que buscar responder la pregunta. Entonces pregunta cómo cambiaron los estándares. She gives examples of all that in the lecture. Okay, so 30 seconds to prepare your response. Starting now. All right. Cayetano, would you like to share your response?
Yes.
All right. So your 60 seconds to speak start now.
Okay, around the 20th century, the decline of the Greco-Roman ideal art started to decrease. But in the audience, I listened that the problem here was the people that work in art. They try to find oversimplification art because the Greco-Roman is focused in high level abstract work. So actually they want to simplify. The other point that they tell us is about the professional critics. They start to have less people to argue this kind of art. They have lower students and dedicated in painting. So that's my ideas here.
All right. Thank you, Cayetano. In tiempo, you were a little off by maybe like 5 or 6 seconds. How do you feel you did? ¿Cómo sientes que te fue? How do you feel with your answer?
Connect the ideas because I had some ideas here about the art was oversimplified. Many students grades was less in painting. They don't spend time in hard painting. But I couldn't talk about it.
Yeah, actually, like I said, you were a little bit over with the time. So the information that you had, we would have to, en todo caso, encontrar formas de make it a little more concise. And I don't know si entraría más información, incluso aparte. Like if you had more things you wanted to say, I don't think they would have fit with the limited time we had. So I think it's a matter of seeing how to make your ideas a little more concise with the examples you're going to give. Also, al momento de describir, you talked about how art is, well, the art that they mentioned was now very abstract. What type of art was that? Cuando hablas de arte abstracto, did you mention that it was the Greco-Roman type of ideal? O, porque sí creo que eso te entendí, que más bien el ideal greco-romano era el que buscaba ser abstracto.
Que el ideal de Greco-Romano es high abstract.
Yes. Eso igual, that information isn't fully correct. Because, a ver, vamos respondiendo, vemos cómo podríamos estructurar esto. We kind of have to give the context, right? Pero igual, por eso siempre es importante que vean bien la pregunta. Because in this case, the context isn't really that important. Sino que te pide directamente que a partir de esa información, you give your interpretation, your answer on how the standards changed. So veamos qué info nos dan. The text tells us that there was this standard, igual, conocimiento general del mundo, Greco-Roman ideals, ¿no? Como que las pinturas renacentistas y todas esas cosas bien elegantes y bonitas. So that standard stopped being popular, kind of. Eso nos da el texto. So we can talk about how, we can start with, the text mentions how Greco-Roman ideals fell out of favor or became less popular in the 20th century. Introducido, la primera parte. The lecture gives us some more reasons for that. Ya tienes tu contexto en 10 segundos o menos. And the examples they give in the lecture, en el audio, igual son importantes. Menciona por qué cambia este estándar, en la pintura especialmente. She gives a very concrete example. Do you guys remember? The invention of photography. Since now cameras exist, people don't worry about painting super realistic paintings, right? So eso es un motivo. La gente empieza a ser abstracta. Actually, por eso, abstract art is very different. It's the opposite of these Greco-Roman ideals. Porque es a lo que va la gente cuando ya no busca estos ideales. She also mentions critics. She mentions that critics were maybe not the biggest reason for these changes. No, sino que era más estos inventos, el avance de la tecnología. But yes, that critics kind of oversimplified abstract art. So vamos a hacer uno más diferente, because I think estos tipo historia are a little heavy.
May I try this one?
Oh, sure. Si te animas a probar este, dale. All right. So your 60 seconds. Ready, Adrian?
Yes.
Yeah. Your 60 seconds start now.
Okay, according to the reading passage, Greco-Roman art showed the pinnacle of achievement. However, in the 20th century, this view changed due to the philosophers that judged it by its power to evoke ideas and emotions. Additionally, the professor says that this kind of art was based on beauty and fixed perfection. But in the 20th century, instead of that, this century became more abstract than any other time, changing the style due to the invention of the camera. However, many modern artists still use Greco-Roman method again, making it difficult to disappear this kind of art.
All right. Y te faltaban 3 segundos, pero ya está. All right, thank you. Good answer. Wonderful answer. And yes, por eso les digo, it's super important for you guys to understand all the information so you can put the answer in your own words. No, ahí estaba toda la información necesaria, pero la has puesto en tus propias palabras. So it's very clear that you understood all the information. No, igual. La introducción para dar el contexto, very clear in the right amount of time. All the information was there. So, buena respuesta. Thank you, Adrián. So, yeah, guys, por eso es importante que entiendan. So, hagan preguntas. Let's see one more of these, okay? Oh, fun. Psychology. Realmente no nos han dejado en paz los temas sociales hoy día. Okay, so hypnotherapy. This one is about psychology. Read a passage from a psychology textbook. Same thing, 45 seconds to read. And when your 45 seconds start now. All right. Creo que siguen leyendo un poquito más. All right. Any words, any ideas that weren't clear? Esta que está resaltada. Si no saben qué significa, ask me.
I don't know.
Okay. Coaxing means kind of like convincing, but very gently. Like, this is convencer, es persuadir, pero muy gentilmente. So it's kind of like meter a alguien, convencerlo into a dreamlike state. Anything else? All right. Now we're going to listen to the lecture. Same thing. If there's anything you don't understand, no tengan miedo de preguntar.
Now listen to part of a lecture from a psychology class.
Hypnosis is controversial for several reasons. First, not everyone can actually be hypnotized. I mean to say, only certain types of people are able to fall completely under the power of a hypnotist's suggestions. But at the same time, a lot of patients are eager to please their therapists. So for this reason, patients might be likely to pretend to be hypnotized, when in reality, they're wildly improvising. That means hypnotherapy leads to false positives, times when patients exaggerate the effects. People make up memories, totally false information that they otherwise wouldn't have said, just so in order to make it seem like the hypnotism is working. And it gets worse. Sometimes hypnosis might create false psychological problems. For example, these days, a lot of people question whether split personality disorder, or as it's actually called, dissociative identity disorder, whether this disease in which people have multiple personalities, it's questioned whether this is a disease that is found in nature or whether psychiatrists themselves basically created the disorder. It's thought that when psychiatrists question patients suffering from trauma and used hypnosis, they sometimes bombarded them with leading questions. Then these questions basically implanted the idea of split personalities where it didn't even exist before. No one stopped to think that the hypnosis might only reinforce made-up behavior by giving patients an excuse, a scapegoat. Many times, for example, people claim to have been suffering from dissociative identity disorder to avoid being held liable in court for crimes allegedly committed by their other personalities.
Using the
Okay. This one, how did you feel about this one? Is there anything you didn't understand? Was the vocabulary hard for this one? ¿Les pareció difícil de seguir?
I don't know what is crumbs. I think that it is in the final of the listening part. I'm not sure what is that.
What word was it?
In the final, he mentioned, I think, twice this word.
All right, let's listen to it again y me dices qué parte es.
Made-up behavior by giving patients an excuse, a scapegoat. Many times, for example, people claim to have been suffering from dissociative identity disorder to avoid being held liable in court for crimes allegedly committed.
There or
These crumbs.
And this part, there are a lot of words that are new, and I'm pretty sure maybe you guys haven't heard of them before. She talks about how people use this disorder called dissociative identity disorder, no, de personalidad múltiple, to excusar being liable in court. Liable means que puede ser como que puesta culpa encima de ti. Now that you're guilty, kind of, en corte. So, to avoid being held guilty for a crime, por un crimen. This is basically saying that people pretend they have this disorder to evitar que los metan a la cárcel. So, eso. Anything else that wasn't clear? All right. Ahora sí vamos a escuchar la pregunta. Y a ver.
In court for crimes allegedly committed by their other personalities.
So crimes is crimen.
Using the points and examples given in the lecture, explain why hypnotherapy has proven to be a controversial form of treatment.
Okay, so the question is explain why it's controversial using examples. So your 30 seconds to prepare. Start now. Okay. Would anyone like to share? Does anyone feel ready? ¿Se anima? Liliana, maybe you'd like to try?
Yes, teacher.
Dale. Okay, so your 60 seconds start now.
According to the reading passage, the hypnosis is a trait in psychiatric. It consists in dream people and do orders, but this is not real. In the lecture, the professor illustrates that it is a controversial trait because everybody is different and the power of the hypnosis is different in everyone. So, for example, a bad thing is that this in somebody create physical problems and most of personalities and disorder in these people. So this is a trauma and it changed their behaviors and excuses in all. Yes.
All right. Was there any other idea you wanted to add? ¿Te faltaba algo que tenías anotado? Or did you say everything you wanted to say?
No, I say all I want to say.
All right. So, a ver, bueno, ya van a ser las 9, así que we're just going to see this one really quick. Okay. The introduction was a little bit unclear. Creo que faltaba definir un poco mejor what exactly hypnotherapy is. No, so especially that part, if they give us the information, we have to be sure that that information is complete. No, en la intro. Y the examples that you gave were clear. The first one was clear. I think the first example was se entendía, well argumented. The second one was a little like faltaba un poquito de info, but the first one was okay. And also, when describing hypnotherapy, I think you described it as a trait. When maybe the right way to describe this, más que maybe una característica o algo de la psiquiatría, it's a form of treatment. Igual siempre pueden sacar palabras clave o directamente de la pregunta o del texto o de sus apuntes que hayan sacado del audio. So maybe una mejor forma de describirlo hubiera sido hypnotherapy is a form of treatment or is a treatment directamente. Es un tratamiento psiquiátrico, bla, 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 bla. So eso, Liliana. Thank you. All right, we're going to leave it there, you guys, because it's already 9 o'clock. I don't know if you guys have any questions, comments, if you guys found this task more difficult. Dudas, comentarios, anything, quejas de la vida, if you want to like say, I hate this, odio este tipo de pregunta.
Yes, it was a little bit difficult, more than other topics.
It is. In general, you guys, especially the ones that have like formal academic language, they're a little bit difficult. Así que en general les recomiendo ir escuchando podcasts de cualquier tema, pero que tenga lenguaje un poco más así pesadito, por decirlo. So you guys get used to it. Whatever area you like, programming, history, literature, whatever. Otra queja, duda, comentario, pregunta.
Especially the first about pictograms. It was a little bit difficult.
Yeah, like I said, those, especially that one, I don't know what it is with that one, that everyone has difficulties with it. So don't worry if it was hard. Todo el mundo odia ese listening. Any other question? Okay, entonces lo dejaremos ahí, guys. Les mando su encuestita y ya saben, la llenan y pueden irse saliendo de la reunión. So have a nice weekend, guys. It was really nice to see you today. And eso, I'll see you guys next week.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice weekend,
everyone.
everyone. Hi, guys.
Nice weekend.